The roguelike deck builder genre is one of the more oversaturated in gaming. There's a lot of them out there and they can tend to bleed together considering how closely many titles follow the template set by Slay the Spire. But even in oversaturated genres, there's new ground to be broken, new evolutions to the formula that can push games past their competition. Monster Train 2 is that evolution. It's a game that truly understands how to make the genre work, and it's one of the best roguelike deck builders ever made. Monster Train 2 is the follow-up to the 2020 original, which was developer Shiny Shoe's first release. It was one of my favorite games in the genre, and I've been eagerly anticipating its sequel ever since, even if I was somewhat let down by Shiny Shoe's last game, Inkbound. As a massive card game nerd, the original Monster Train just hit notes most games in the genre didn't, and I'm happy to say the follow-up keeps that strong core and adds more depth and content around it. The game functions similar to most deck builders. Draw a few cards from your deck each turn and play them with a mana resource, then discard the remainder and do the same again. Once you reach the end of your deck, everything from the discard is shuffled back in and you keep going. You use these cards and mana to play things such as spells, monsters, and equipment with the goal of taking down waves of enemies before they can reach your pyre. Think of it like a tower defense game with goofy-looking monsters instead of towers. The big difference compared to something like Slay the Spire is that instead of one character that protects and attacks, you can summon monsters to do the fighting for you. There are 3 levels of the train you can summon monsters to. These monsters will fight enemies at the end of each turn, with each side attacking automatically. Enemies first, then your own creatures. Any enemies who survive will move to the next level of the train and the next layer of your defenses. If they make it through all 3 levels, they can take a few whacks at your pyre before dying. Should your pyre hit 0, the run is over. This can happen gradually over a few levels or all at once if you let a boss get through with too much health. Each level will consist of several waves of enemies followed by a boss. When the bosses enter, rather than one round of combat, they'll take on your monsters until one side is completely wiped out. Your goal is to make it past 8 levels of enemies with major bosses at levels 3, 6, and 8. Do that without your pyre going out and you win, which of course will unlock harder and harder optional difficulties for you to keep challenging. The differences between this and a lot of other deck builders should be immediately visible with the 3 tiers of the train. It's not about simply or linearly lowering health to 0, given you have multiple opportunities to stop enemies before they reach the top. This opens up a ton of design space. Things like putting damage over time creatures at the bottom to slowly whittle down enemies, debuffers on the floor below the pyre to limit damage if enemies get through, and countless other things that give players endless options to pick through. The theme for Monster Train 2 is just mechanical mastery. Shiny Shoe has done an incredible job of nailing the appeal of both card games and roguelites. The card pool is varied and interesting, there's dozens of keywords and mechanics, and it does a great job of not only providing you with tons of options, but allowing for those options to be good enough to win a run. There are 10 different clans to choose from, each with their own card pool and themes, and each clan has 2 starter heroes to choose from that have 3 separate upgrade paths and represent the start points of different builds. There is just so much here, and yet all of it feels viable and interesting. Part of this is due to how it handles card upgrades throughout runs. Again, instead of linear upgrades, you can choose between a host of different ones depending on what clans you've chosen. These can be simple enhancements like attack buffs to transformative effects like gaining armor for every spell, turning any unit into a frontline monster. This is true for spells as well, and it can turn basically any card in the game into a hyper-powerful build-around. There's so much depth in here and so many options that both allow for interesting things to be done on lower difficulties and test player knowledge on higher difficulties as they try to assemble a build to take on increasingly monstrous bosses. There's that roguelike cliche about how every game out there claims that every run is different, but Monster Train is one of my favorite examples of a game really pulling that off. The difference between running a creature-based clan like the Banished who tries to take things out with raw strength, and doing stuff like infinitely cycling your own units as they die and come back with the Melting Remnant, it's almost like 2 completely different games. And speaking of the Melting Remnant, that's a clan from Monster Train 1. An awesome surprise that hasn't really been advertised by Shiny Shoe is that essentially the entirety of content from the first game is available here. All of the clans and most of their cards have returned, and they can be mixed and matched with the new clans for some insane synergies. The amount of content in this game is legitimately mind-boggling, with so many cards, events, options, and types of challenges. Escalating difficulties on your main runs, curated challenge runs in the form of the Dimensional Portal, daily and community challenges with dozens of custom modifiers and leaderboards, everything is here. This is a polished, feature-rich experience the whole way through. If I have anything negative to really say, it's that the presentation can be a bit lackluster at times. Some of the art is awkward looking, the music can be a bit generic although there are a few good tunes, and the visual design for the most part doesn't really stand out. The exception here are the monsters themselves, funky and goofy designs that give each clan a lot of character. The weirder things are, the better they tend to look. When the game tries to make stuff look cool, it can be a bit underwhelming, but when it goes all out with the absurd monstrosities, that's when it really shines. Other negatives include the story, which has nothing really going on, although that's pretty par for the course in this genre. And one mechanical problem I will bring up is too often the best builds are making one giant floor with as many buffed up dudes as possible. To the game's credit, the harder bosses you unlock after finishing the story will punish this playstyle, but up until that point, it can feel like a pretty overwhelming way to win. But there's just so much good here. There's stuff I haven't even mentioned, like merging equipment and being able to swap out different pyre hearts with passive bonuses. There's honestly just too much to get to without making this review way too long. If you're on the fence, I advise checking out the available demo. It gives you a great idea of the core gameplay, even if it doesn't show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes in terms of how many cards and synergies the game has available. The negatives I can come up with are nitpicks or minor issues. They didn't really impact my enjoyment at all. Monster Train 2 is a masterpiece. It's a unique concept brilliantly executed and something anyone interested in the genre should play. It's masterfully designed in a way that allows the player to do incredibly strange and powerful things while still giving them a challenge. It's packed full of so much content that the $25 price tag feels like a prank. If you played the first, you'll love the new cards, new mechanics, and new clans. If you never played the first, the second is basically better in every way and a perfect place to start. Monster Train 2 is a must-play game. Noisy Pixel gives it a 9.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please remember to subscribe and check out the Noisy Pixel Patreon. Make sure to stay tuned for more news and reviews.
Noisy Pixel.